So there are some very interesting research which shows how much the situation around us or how much the culture around us influences. Because sometimes we may have this idea that I am this kind of a person who likes to do this kind of a thing and who has this kind of a character and all that. So it sounds very static, but these researches shows how much we can get influenced by culture around us or situation around us, how much they mold our actions and behavior. So one of the very famous research is this Stanford prison experiment, and what they did is basically they wanted to see that how people will react if we put them in a different roles, right? How their behavior and action changes, right? So what they did is basically they created this kind of a pseudo prison inside the Stanford facilities, which simulate kind of a prison environment, small rooms, people, all that kind of things. And then they hired 20 normal average people, right? They just hired some student from the Stanford, I guess, but average student, right? They were not good or bad, just like normal average person, right? And then they divided them into half of the people will be acting as a prisoner, acting, right? And half of the people will be acting as a guard. And the experiment will be for 2 weeks. And they want to see if we put them in these kind of roles, does it affect their behavior in any way, right? They're normal average people. Does it affect any kind of behavior inside them, right? So they divide half the people guard, half the people are prisoners. And the result of this experiment was so much, it's up to you, like how you say it, interesting or disturbing, that the experiment has to be stopped within a week. They could not even complete 2 weeks. They have to stop within a week. And what they found, the people who were playing the role of guard and the people who were playing the role of the prisoner, the people who were playing the role of the guard become so oppressive, so aggressive, so humiliating, right? They start, they were not given any kind of instruction that you have to do this or that. In fact, I think they were giving the instruction like you cannot physically touch the prisoners or something like that. But very quickly they become very oppressive, right? Very quickly they become like, they won't let the prisoners sleep and they were harassing them and all these kind of things, right? Very naturally. And the prisoner was also acting, in accordance. And what the research shows in a negative sense, but what it shows is if you put people in a different roles, right, those roles affect the people significantly, right? You will not imagine like these people who seems to be very average will become so harassing and so oppressive. But because they were in that role, it brings that aspect of their personality, right? So things like these. So they shows like how the different situation, different power made people do things which they won't see, which they think they won't do normally. But the situation, if you change the situation, they might end up doing it. Another similar research is obedience to authority, right? They just get another average person, and this person was sitting in front of some kind of a panel, some kind of knobs or things like these, and there was an experimenter sitting next to him with a white cloak, seems like a doctor, that kind of a setting. And in the other room, which he cannot see, there was somebody who was an actor but who was pretending to be the part of experiment as well, right? And the experiment was that this person has to move knobs based on the instructions of the experimenter, and every time he moves the knob, the other person in the room will get the shock. Of course, he's not getting the shock and he's an actor, so he can pretend like getting the shock, but the other person in the room will get the shock based on what experimenter is saying. And this person who's completely average, again what they find was quite interesting, is that this person who doesn't even know the other person, because just because other person is saying the experiment must go on, he can move the knob so far that it can even kill the other person, right? So again, the kind of behavior we will never imagine, like we can actually kill another human being with giving shocks and all that. But if you change the situation, not even so much, if you just change the situation a little bit, these behavior can be possible in every human being. That's what they were trying to show, but more in the negative sense. What are the negative behavior? What are the kind of a evil behavior that a person can perform if the situation changes? And we are doing the positive psychology. So these same principle, another experimenter, another researcher applied in a positive sense, right? They said, okay, if the situation and the culture is changing, affecting or influencing person so much, let us see how it can affect positively. Is it possible that the situation and the culture can affect a person in a positive manner, right? So what they did is they did a 1 week retreat. They recruited more people who are 75 plus, like old people, and then they create this environment which is younger, like 20 years young, 20 years older than, let's say currently it's 2020. So they created an environment which was simulating 2000, right, 20 years before. So all the magazine, all the music, all the everything, fashion, everything was around, same as it was 2000, right? And these people who are 75 plus, they were also asked to behave as if they are 20 years younger, right? So they kind of created this simulation where they were acting as if it's 20-year old. It's like, they are 20 year more younger, and it's like they are in the 20 years before time, right? And this was just 1 week retreat, right? So they did it, they asked them to do it, and it's just 1 week. After that, again, what they find was quite amazing. What they find is like these people who are relatively older, they are much more flexible, they are much more strong, and a lot of biological differences, not even like psychological and physical, biological difference. Their finger seems to be more what do you say, stretched or more longer than the normal people, all the young age people signs, right? So it is true also in the positive sense that if the situation changes, person can start playing a positive role as well, right? The situation can positively influence a person, uh, even to the point of biology, right? So again, quite an interesting research, but the overall point here is that situation around us or culture around us influences tremendously. We may not be aware how much it is influencing, but it does influence quite a lot, right? And if the situation changes, we might be able to do things that we generally don't uh, expect from us to do, right? Quite an interesting thing. And this is, again, you can see this more clearly, like different countries seems to have a different sort of talent. For example, US people seems to be very innovative, right? A lot of good companies keep coming up from the US. Now, it's not maybe so much about the people who are very innovative or creative. It is more about the culture is like that, where these kind of roles are available to people, right? So the people are playing that role, right? The culture is influencing people to become more innovative. The same thing can be in some other country. People are very aggressive, they are very fighting with each other and all that thing. Again, this is not the fault of the people, but because of the situation and the roles that are available are influencing them heavily, right? It's quite interesting research, and the bottom line of the research is we can actually create a very positive environment around us, right? If the environment is affecting so much, we can at least change our home environment. We can change, we can make it so that it is positively influencing us. If it has to influence us, it can at least influence us positively.